Hello again, and welcome to this interview in the series that is all about empowering a league of extraordinary mothers on how to use the power of food to get more energy, a body we love, and that zest for life that we crave. Today we have with us the very gorgeous Naomi Judge. And Naomi is a naturopath with a gift for helping women to connect the dots between their health, happiness, and hormones. You could not be more perfect for this show, Naomi. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you. Fantastic to be here.
Yay. Can we start with your story, and if we can just kind of hear about how you came to be doing the work that you're doing?
Sure. I mean, I think my story is so similar to many other nutritionists, naturopaths, and also, health coaches, people who come into this health field. You come in from a place of where you needed healing yourself. And I think that's where a lot of the learning is had. Yeah. And I was, I was quite an unhealthy teenager. Unhealthy because I had some hormonal problems. I'd been put on the pill at a very young age, and no one, even back then, that was seen as normal. It was seen as normal that I was getting pain. So I was put on the pill, and that kind of cascaded into me suffering from depression, suffering with anxiety, and then having metabolic issues with my thyroid. And that lasted in my late teens all the way into my early 20s. Until actually it was my partner who got an appointment with a naturopath for me to go and see one. And it was that naturopath that just made just a few dietary changes. I mean, at that point in my life, my diet was horrendous. I had tried to be healthy, or what I saw as being healthy. I was vegetarian at the time, and I was having, I was having toast in the morning. I was having a sandwich for lunch, and I was basically under eating, but I was trying to be healthy, what I thought was healthy. And I went to see a naturopath, made a few dietary changes. That was it, just a few key changes. And I just remember within weeks, my energy coming back. My energy was just started to come back. My health started to come back because I was so unwell. I was getting UTIs all the time. I was going to the doctor. I was on all these antibiotics. And I just remember those few changes. And it was then that my brain just suddenly clicked, and I thought, wow, there's a lot more to this. And that's when I started to study. I went to night school, and then I went to college, and I went to uni, and it kind of cascaded from there.
Yeah. Our stories are so similar. I was on the same path. I grew up in a family where we ate whole foods, real foods. But then when I left home, I was like, yay, freedom. And it was like McDonald's and loads of alcohol and all this, and I just got sicker and sicker and fatter and just so unhealthy. And till my mum sent me to see a naturopath, and I just saw this woman that was glowing with vitality and health, and she was so warm. And I think it's that idea that you sit with somebody for a whole hour, and rather than a 5-minute consult with a GP. And I just felt so nurtured in that time, and that set me on my path. So it's a similar story.
I think, and it's just amazing how quickly it can start to happen. Just those little changes, not huge, small changes.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about that confusion with thinking that you're eating healthy, but really we need to tweak it. And I think this is a massive theme for most mums, because we're all doing the absolute best that we can with the information that we have. And how do we kind of start to wade through some of the confusion that is currently, flooding our news feeds, whether you're supposed to be paleo or vegan or raw or, fasting, or there's just so many things that we're bombarded with that we're supposed to, are going to be the magic fix. How do we start to wade through some of that?
Gosh, I mean, it's hard. It's hard because there is so much out there. But I think starting with the basics, and what I tell every client is forget about all those diets for a moment. Forget about being vegan. Forget about doing the keto. Forget about doing fasting. Forget about doing the 16-8 at first, and just make sure you're actually finding time first to eat. Are you having your breakfast, your lunch, and dinner? Just start there so simply. If you want to in the future, you can move on to these diets, but start with making sure, am I actually making time for breakfast? Because if I'm not making time for breakfast, how am I going to be a healthy vegan? Or how am I going to do fasting healthy? So first figure that out. And then, like you say, you slowly just bring in simple whole foods. That's all you do first. You just make sure you've got those basics in order.
Yeah. Okay, so if we look at, I think probably one of the hottest topics for we mums and women in general is our hormones, and our hormones are responsible, well, for everything, really.
It's true.
How do we connect in the idea of looking after our hormones through food? Is there actually a connection there?
Yeah, I think food is one of the best ways we can. Food will there's a couple of reasons our hormones go so haywire, as you'd know, and especially new mums. We've got that whole issue of, you know, all your nutrients going to a newborn, and then also food cravings. Maybe when you're pregnant or breastfeeding, maybe having more sugars than you should have. So we've got all of that nutritional issues going on. And two other big reasons that our hormones go haywire when we're not supported by diet is stress and also blood sugar fluctuations. So if we can manage or at least nurture ourselves through diet to support stress, or use our diet, you know, eating our breakfast, our lunch, and our dinner to support our blood sugar, that's actually going to help us to support our estrogen, our progesterone levels, which are our sex hormones, which in turn keep us calm, keep us sleeping well, keep us able to adapt to stressors in life.
Yeah. So if you get a mum that comes into you in clinic and she's like, I'm sleeping for 8 hours a night, but I just wake up and I'm exhausted every day. What are you sort of looking at there? What are some of the pictures?
Well, when it's, you know, if we're talking about diet, we would look at, okay, are you getting the energy from your diet that you need to do what you need to be doing in the day? Are you getting the right foods to support your metabolic health? So by that, that's kind of your thyroid. And are you getting the right foods to support your hormones? So are you getting fats, which cholesterol, which actually make your hormones? Are you getting the nutrients, zinc and selenium, to help support your metabolic health? So first of all, I would just actually look at what foods were included in the diet, and we would just look at supporting that. So it's really easy to get into that. It's really easy for new mums to get into that trap of just actually kind of grazing on a little bit through the day. It's that's what happens, you know. Stress comes in, there's time management, there's so much going on. So if you're just kind of grazing, once you start grazing, then you might also be adding in a few kind of foods that aren't creating long-lasting energy, you know, foods that aren't supporting energy for 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 hours. So you're kind of having this energy spike, energy lull, and that can be going on the diet. You know, maybe if you're really hungry and it's in the afternoon, you haven't eaten properly, and so when you're really hungry and you haven't eaten, what do you feel like? You feel like kind of something sugary. So you may think, oh, I'm being healthy by having a bit of toast with honey on, but if you haven't eaten for a long time, eating that will give you a little bit of energy, but then you're going to find you're exhausted, say, an hour later. So it's just looking at having these foods, proteins and fats, and whole, you know, not refined carbohydrates to help support your energy.
Yeah. So if we were looking at toast and honey, what's a good alternative?
Well, if someone was snacking on toast and honey, you could do a really simple swap. The simplest swap would be having something like a wholemeal or sourdough toast, and then having some avocado on top. Yeah. So then at least you're kind of bringing in a little bit of fat that's not spiking your blood sugar. So that could be a really simple swap. Or going a little bit further, some people might have a boiled egg or something like that on top of the toast, just so that you've either got the protein or the fat. I mean, that's what you want to look out for whenever you're hungry. I always say to my clients, there's nothing wrong with snacking on, if you want a little treat now and again, but if you're starving, if you're hungry, you need to be having protein or fat rather than sugar. You might really feel like sugar, but have something protein and fat first, because you'll find that's really going to reward you.
Yeah. And, there's been a great movement towards, replacing our low fat diet that we all grew up with eating more fat. But I know from the women that I speak to, this is still something that takes a huge amount of conversation and understanding, and what is a good fat and what's not a good fat and how much fat. So I think it's, I'd love to have that conversation with you now, just so that we can keep trying to help mums understand what that should look like. Can you touch on that for us?
Sure. So really just understand, I mean, it's all about activity as well. So even though we might hear that, you know, a ketogenic diet can, a ketogenic diet, for those that don't know, is it's a diet it's, you know, fat is your primary fuel source. So someone on a ketogenic diet would have a really, really high fat diet coupled with protein and very, very low kind of carbohydrate, starchy foods. Now, for some people, that's a lot of fat. So I wouldn't go straight into a diet like that, but starting to bring in fats into your diets. For instance, if you're not used to fats, or you've still got that little bit of fear, you would just start by having, say, quarter of an avocado. You would start by adding a quarter of an avocado to your food. So if normally for breakfast you would have, say, a scrambled egg, you could start by adding quarter of a avocado to that. Or, you know, cooking your scrambled egg in a little bit, like a teaspoon of butter, to give you, say, your vitamin A, your vitamin D, vitamin E, those fat soluble vitamins in the butter. So, you know, just starting off with, say, a teaspoon, which is about 5 grams, or quarter of an avocado, and just seeing how you digest it and seeing how it makes you feel. Because if you're someone that's new to this and you don't eat these fats, you might have one meal, but you're not having them at all your 3 meals, you'll find that it will start to give you your energy, and then you can up it a little bit from there. Yeah. I use fat as one of my primary fuel sources, but you have to get there, you have to work up there, and it does take a little bit of effort at first to organize that. So an example for me is I would actually have half an avocado. So I would have half an avocado. If I was having breakfast, I would have an egg with half an avocado, and that would last me till lunch. But everyone's just a little bit different, as you'd know. Everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And it takes tweaking. You know, if we're used to having 2 Weet Bix with milk and sugar for breakfast, then there's just small steps to take.
It's small steps, you know. And if someone's used to that, you know, I have a lot of people who are used to, a lot of clients who are still on the low fat diet. So they're still having low fat. So they'll come to me and they'll say, I'm having oats with water every morning. That's my breakfast. And we talk through, well, what are the nutrients in oats and water? You know, water is not really a nutrient. There's no energy in the water. There's really no vitamins. So that kind of doesn't count as a food source in that respect. And in the oats, what have you got? We've got about 50 to 60% starch. We've got some B vitamins and a little bit of protein. So what would we add there? And we would just change it. So you'd have the oats. Maybe you'd add a little bit of coconut milk. Maybe if they were good with dairy, they'd have some whole milk, and maybe adding in some nuts and seeds. And you can see how easy then it is actually to create a balanced meal from something you were having by adding just a few additions.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, even though we're certainly putting lots of focus on food, when we think about energy and our hormones, food is just one piece of the puzzle, isn't it? So, you know, I think it's always worth touching on the other bits that are just as crucial. Are you happy to take a minute to do that?
Yes, yeah, we can talk through some of those, definitely, yes.
So sleep is obviously quantities of sleep, how much sleep we need, and the times that we're going to bed and waking up, do they all make a difference?
It does. Sleep's huge. Sleep's huge because one of the biggest impacts on our hormones is blood sugar. So if we have high blood sugar, or we are insulin resistant, or we have high insulin in our bodies due to stress, due to lack of sleep, that's going to cause us either to have elevated estrogen or elevated testosterone, whichever way we naturally kind of genetically go. And so sleep will restore that blood sugar balance. You know how if you don't sleep, you wake up the next day and you're craving kind of pancakes with lots of maple syrup on, you know, that's kind of normal when you haven't slept. So it does affect our blood sugar, and definitely the amount of sleep and the time you go to bed does count. But here's the thing. I think first focus on quality. So focus on getting that good quality sleep where you can. And of course, as a new mum with a baby, it's difficult. So what you need to focus on there is actually sleeping guilt-free and napping. If you're being kept awake all the time, you need to find every opportunity to be able to just have that 15-20 minute rest, lie down, and not feeling guilty about it. That's kind of key there. but definitely quality at nighttime. So if you can get to bed by 10, you know, if that's a possibility, that's a great time to be in bed. But if you can't, don't fret. That good quality sleep, you know, making sure that you're powered down, making sure that your iPhone's not next to you, making sure that your plug next to your head is turned off in the electricity outlet, or that you have blackout blinds, just those kind of things, because that will create a sleep that will help to balance your hormones. And we know that when we sleep is so very important. When we sleep, not only is it balancing our hormones, but it's actually, you know, our immune system is doing what it needs to do. So we'll get sick less, we'll have less inflammation, and we'll just generally feel better. So work on quality first, and then look at the timings that are possible for you.
Yeah. Well, you talk about excess progesterone quite a lot on your website, and some of it, you know, some of the things that are indicators that we actually have an excess. So maybe if we start to look at some of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely looking at the balance of hormone. It's interesting. Everyone's so different where they will go, and in terms of too much of one, not enough of the other. But a lot of times what I see is with estrogen dominance. Estrogen dominance is quite common because we have a number of different estrogens, and we're exposed to so much, you know, in our house, cleaning products, plastics, chemicals, stress. So we actually can make, and this is why there's kind of this misconception that when we go through menopause, we just lack 100% in hormones. We don't. We're still making hormones. We're still making, if we get stressed, we'll still make certain hormones. We might still make some estrogen. If we are exposed to estrogen in the environment, we will absorb that, and we will continue to make estrogen that can cause weight gain, depression, hair loss, that kind of thing. So that's a biggie. I would say that's one of the most common. I see estrogen dominance, and then I do see testosterone dominance as well, which is that polycystic ovarian syndrome picture. You know, these are women that maybe struggle to get pregnant, and had issues, you know, with body hair, maybe acne, maybe some weight problems. So I see those, and again, that's a dietary blood sugar issue coupled with stress. But I have to say, with all of these hormonal imbalances, not managing stress or not learning from a young age to manage stress and having a busy life is a big factor here. And I see it in a lot of my teenage clients. I've got a lot of teenage clients that are coming in stressed, and their hormones are out a lot.
Yeah, it's a big thing. I see this as well, and I think that that we as mums are often leading the way. You know, our lives are so incredibly, inhumanely busy now with everything that just seems to be normal. And I think, you know, we're setting the tone, and I'm as guilty as anybody. I'm not I'm not pointing fingers by any means, but, you know, we live these very, very busy lives. And then, you know, there's so much pressure on our kids to be busy and to be doing all the time. This idea of just being, of just stopping, is something that we need to almost relearn. It's a bit like we're relearning how to eat. We also have to relearn how to stop a bit as well.
It's so true. I mean, I think that it's this age, isn't it? It's this technology age. We haven't learned we're not yet adapted to be on demand, be on the phone, be on the email all the time, plus have everything else. I think this is definitely a new transition.
Yeah.
And it's people are struggling.
Yeah, it's big. So if we go back to that topic of estrogen and excess estrogen, I think it's really worth kind of fleshing that out a little bit more, because I'm sure the idea that we're getting estrogen from our environment is a new topic for many women. And as we kind of battle with perimenopause and putting on weight and trying to do the diets that we were doing 10 years ago that no longer work, what's the picture there?
Yeah, so I mean, it starts from a young age, and it can start from, you know, for example, for me, it started, I was estrogen dominant, and I had my very first sign of it from a young age. So we can become estrogen dominant even before we started menstruating. This is a scary thing. So as babies and young children, we can still be estrogen dominant, which is a weird thing for people to realize. But at about 13, I think I was about 12, 13, I had a really bad pain in my ovary that had me crippling over, and I wasn't quite sure what it was. Now looking back, it was an ovarian cyst, and I've had a few of them through my life, and I've had surgery prior to changing my diet and getting healthy and figuring out what was going on. Heavy painful periods, depression, fluctuating weight, food cravings, bloating, constipation, diarrhea are all of these kind of early signs of estrogen dominance. These are the signs that we think are normal. We think it's normal to have heavy painful periods. We think it's normal maybe to have to take an Advil or a paracetamol when we have our period. And okay, occasionally we do have a difficult period. There will be one that's a bit more painful because maybe we didn't eat quite right, or we were stressed, or something happened in our life. If something happens, it will affect our menstrual cycle. But generally, from month to month, we shouldn't have debilitating periods. And this is the first sign, and this is the first sign that's ignored, and was ignored by us, was ignored by our GPs, who said this was normal, let's put you on the contraceptive pill and you'll be on this now until you either have children or you reach menopause. And then what kind of happens is, because we haven't figured out that we have this issue of estrogen dominance in our teens and 20s, it starts to change its picture. And the picture can be infertility, recurrent miscarriages. We go from ovarian cysts to maybe having fibroids, even precancerous growths, on our ovaries, pap smears that come back with SIN1 or 2, and even breast cancers, lumps. So you can see that I know that's a little bit scary, and I know, and I don't want to scare anyone by any means, but it can progress like that. So that's why we need to kind of get on top of it early and understand the earlier signs that we thought were normal are really signs that our hormones are out.
Yeah. I don't think it's scary. I think it's empowering. The more we have this information and getting these conversations out there, the more we can go, okay, well, actually that's a little light bulb. Let's have a look.
Yes, I hope so. I hope if someone, that's what we hope from these things, these conversations, that someone will go, oh, maybe there's something I can do.
Yeah. And that brings it back to that whole conversation about what has become normal. I just have really bad periods, and it becomes an accepted thing that you go on and have forever, or I'm a headache person, or I just, what this idea that it's normal to not be vital and well is something that we really see a lot of, isn't it?
It is. And even as simple as, I have clients come in and see me, and they're just, I'm exhausted. I don't know what's wrong. Like you say, I feel like I'm eating right. I am sleeping, but I'm just so tired. I'm exhausted. I've had my bloods done and my GP says I'm fine. Yeah. Just, live with it, kind of thing. Yeah. And there could be so much more that's going on. And there's so much more that can be done with diet, with nutrients, with stress, to help these women reach their optimal health.
Yeah. Something that we were talking about before we hit record was this influx of teenage girls that we're seeing that are going on to a vegan diet. And I know that you have some experience in this. So can we go over some of your thoughts around that?
Yeah, look, I think it's, we discuss this, and we discuss, of course, everyone. And one of the things I know I'm not hugely dogmatic about any diet. And it's really about getting the right nutrients and just making sure you're having a whole food diet and enjoying eating as well. But on the same token, I was a vegetarian and also vegan, and I wasn't vegan for 28 years. I was vegetarian for 28 years, and I was kind of vegan on and off. And what came out of it for me was that it did affect my growth and also my mental capacity as well. So my energy was never stable. My energy was always up and down. And I only started eating meat for the first time in 2014. very little bits of it. And I just remember the dramatic change I had in sustained energy all the time, all day, and also my mental capacity. You know, I felt quite it just kind of lit my brain up a little bit. So I think it's important when teenagers do make that decision to become vegan, to understand why, you know, what nutrients they need to get, and to make sure they are feeding their hormones, feeding their brain, and getting the right foods, which can be difficult, can be super hard. But I would say, even if you're a teenager and you're a vegan, actually maybe trying to make allowances. I mean, I've had clients that were vegans, but would still eat maybe a little bit of seafood, or say a bit of oyster. So they were getting the vitamin A, the vitamin D, the fat-soluble hormones, which is so important. If we have a life of no fat-soluble vitamins, we'll have issues in the future with brain health.
Yeah, it's massive.
So they can use foods. I mean, you know, if you're a vegan, I think getting the right fats and just making sure you're having all your avocados and even ghee. I mean, if you take the dairy fat out of the ghee, but trying to have all of those, but just making sure that you are getting the right fats for brain health. And if you are a vegan and you're suffering from depression, or you're suffering from anxiety, or you're having menstrual problems, and just having some testing done to see if you are low in essential fatty acids, making sure your body is compensating and still balancing itself out.
So with our fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E and K, what are your thoughts on, well, if we're not eating it, we can just take supplements?
Yeah, I mean, we can. It's not quite the same, but we can. I mean, with it's really difficult to get vegan fat soluble vitamins. Like, we can get some D, and mushrooms can actually be high in D, especially if you put them out. And we are finding good sources of kind of vegetarian sea plankton, kind of sea vegetables, that have got some DHA in, which is an omega-3, great for the brain. But it is the one that's hard to get, and the one that's hard for us to get in synthetic form as well, is vitamin A, but which is from, you know, liver, from organ meats and liver. It's actually difficult to get that one, but I think most people might be actually a little bit deficient in that, because we're not all eating chicken livers all the time.
No, most of us aren't.
Exactly. Yes.
The conversation is happening. At our local farmers market, I've noticed that that you can now get. We have a local producer that has a fabulous ethical farm, and they're now selling liver. So it's, the demand, it's creeping up.
It's going up, and it's great for your health. Yeah. And just one thing on being a vegetarian vegan, and the place that I feel they need to focus on the most is digestion. Because if you're not, if you're having foods that are harder to digest and harder to get the nutrients from, so for example, kale, quinoa, those kind of foods, nuts and seeds, it's actually hard for our digestion to break them down and then reassimilate the nutrients, reassimilate the amino acids. So you need to make sure that the first place you're working on is, one, chewing the food, sitting down. This goes for everybody. Chewing the food, making sure that you're relaxed when you do it, but also making sure your stomach is really strong at breaking those foods down, and your gut is really apt at reabsorbing those amino acids and doing what it needs to do with those vitamins. I think that's the most important thing. If you've got that working really well, then you can be a healthy vegan. And this is why some people can be healthy vegans and some people can't, because it's just that process. There might be something else going on underlying in the gut.
How do people know that if they're not breaking them down?
Well, the simple things like that, those kind of foods will make you bloated, flatulence, burping, maybe a little bit of tummy pain, or even getting fatigue after eating, or I have a lot of people that eat quinoa and it just goes straight through them. They're not even breaking it down at all. They just see it in their bowel motion.
Yes. Okay. Can we go back to, you talked about being put on the pill and the consequences of that. I think the pill is now the most prescribed drug on our planet. there are, you know, there are certainly a lot of women of my generation that took the pill just because that's what you did, and that, you know, that idea is still just flowing on. I know whether it's because you take a child in because they've got spotty skin, they can get put on the pill. It seems to be prescribed for all number of things, not just preventing pregnancy, but there are some consequences that people need to be aware of, aren't there?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's a whole number of consequences, and I think there's acute, and then obviously you've got the long term. But the pill is simply most times it's estradiol. It's a synthetic form of hormone, and our liver has to metabolize that. So we have that. Our liver has to use nutrients. It has to use zinc. It has to use B vitamins, magnesium to break down that synthetic vitamin, and then our body has to somehow decide how to use this synthetic vitamin when it's actually not recognized by the body. So it's a huge process. So it puts a lot of strain on the liver.
Yeah.
But also what it can do is it can deplete those minerals that we're using to break it down. The magnesium and also B vitamins can become very low, and also zinc. What can also happen with the pill, because we're having synthetic estrogen, and this happened with me, it actually suppresses your metabolic rate. It suppresses your thyroid because it interferes with the conversion to active thyroid T3. So that can also lead to weight problems. Yeah. That can lead to a coldness, feeling cold, feeling depressed, and feeling fatigued all the time, and also having low iron, which is really common in the late teens. A lot of teenagers have low iron on the pill as well, even if they're not menstruating properly. So those are kind of the short-term problems. And then long-term problems, it can lead to, you know, ovarian issues, ovarian failure, and then estrogen dominance in the future, because we've been giving ourselves this synthetic estrogen for so long. Yeah. I was actually on the Implanon. So this was a little rod that was popped into my arm, which is a synthetic progesterone, because the pill wasn't working for me anymore. So they put this in, and it kind of worked for a little bit, but it left me very insulin resistant. I was gaining weight around my tummy, and very depleted and depressed, very low in my moods. And so I think when I had that out, that was it. I took nothing after that, and took nothing I haven't taken anything for a long time. It takes a long time for your pituitary and your ovaries to actually start regulating your menstrual cycle. So I had a long menstrual cycle. My menstrual cycle used to be 45 days for a long time, until I really tested myself and really nutted down what I needed to do. And then now it's, 28 days on the dot.
Yeah. Okay. It's re-regulated.
But yeah, it's huge. I think, obviously some women want to go on for birth control, understandable. But if it's a problem, if it's heavy painful periods, if it's depression, if it's no period, if it's acne, there's a root cause. There's something going on that if you treat now, it's going to make life so much easier in the future. Yep. Treat it now, and then you'll find your hormones will stay balanced. But if you treat it with the pill, which isn't getting to the root cause, it means that problem is going to be underlying, and it's going to hit you even bigger in your 30s, 40s, 50s.
Yeah, it is a big picture, isn't it? That when we're just using like a Band-Aid, something to cover up whatever the symptoms are, rather than actually fixing what's going on.
Totally. Yes.
So for looking at weight management, particularly for 40 plus or perimenopausal women who are not having success with diets that worked earlier, can we go back to where do you point women at that stage?
Well, first of all, it's trying to figure out exactly why. So for some women, it might be simply hormones. It might be estrogen. For others, it could be stress. For some, it might be thyroid. So low thyroid, low metabolic rate, your body is just not turning over as it should be. So those are kind of the main things. And then, of course, diet, looking at diet and just making sure your diet's kind of suiting you, or you're eating to your energy needs. You're not under eating, because if you undereat, you will hold on to weight, but overeating. So doing those, and then just figuring out what movement suits you. So Some women thrive on, motion every day and doing F45 or spin. Some women thrive on just doing nice chilled out yoga or going for a walk. So kind of just working out what works for you, because not everyone's the same. But I'd say if it's an underlying issue and just that weight's not coming off, then definitely testing does need to happen. Knowing if the thyroid is working, plus if your hormones are supporting you, is a huge thing. And then again, working on those other areas. Sleep will support weight loss, gut health, and then also adapting to stress. So adapting to stress is really figuring out how you can come down for stress. So whether it's working out, meditation in the day, or working out where you can have a day off every few weeks to do something, or maybe you need a few days away, or maybe you need an hour off a day. Simple things like that, just working out what works for you to actually bring your nervous system down to a stop point, so you're not constantly overthinking, busy all the time in the brain. Yeah.
We're getting close to the end of our time. I'd love some foodie inspiration. My favorite meal of the day is breakfast, so we'll start there. What's your favorite breakfast, Naomi?
Do you know what my favorite?
I'll put you on the spot. My favorite breakfast is always a savory breakfast. Having said that, if sometimes I do crave something a little bit sweeter, but a savory breakfast. So something that would suit me the best would be something like a grass-fed sausage, some avocado, and maybe a little bit of egg. And the reason that would work for me, and that would give me energy. I listen to how I feel a couple of hours later. If I've eaten and I feel tired, I'm craving sugars, I feel bloated, I don't feel so happy 2 hours later, then I know what I ate didn't suit me. So that's what works really well for me. Really simple, and will give me energy right through to lunchtime. Yeah, okay. And dinner, what's on your menu tonight? Do you know yet?
Okay, so tonight I'm actually going to be having leftovers. So I'm going to be doing a nice big salad.
Yep.
Beautiful big salad. And I'll just be having some leftover steak from last night in that. Cut through that with some avocado. And I also love to use olives as well for my fat source. So I'll just put some nice olives through there to give me a little bit more energy. Now tonight, I'm not putting carb in my dinner, and I'm actually just experimenting at the moment, not having carbohydrate with dinner. I always put carbohydrate, so I always put a bit of pumpkin or sweet potato because it helps me to sleep. Yeah. But I'm actually I'm just reducing that for my dinner, and I'm just seeing if that works for me, how I feel doing that. And then I'm going to add more carbohydrate to my lunch, more sweet potato, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you generally eat 3 times a day? Is that your normal?
I do. That's my normal. And then I do experiment. So I do sometimes not have breakfast or have it a little bit later. And I just play around to see how I'm feeling, and also where I am in my cycle as well, just to see what's happening. And this is why it can be overwhelming for women, because there's always new studies coming out, and there's always new sort of eating tools and techniques. And the newest one that's come out is, the best diet that helps to regulate insulin. And that seems to be right now, with the evidence, eating a big breakfast, big lunch, but skipping dinner. Yeah. That one I haven't tried and I like to try these before I recommend them to clients. I always like to see what the problems are, how you feel. I just love dinner so much.
I love having this conversation because it just opens up the idea that it is an ongoing journey, and as women that have spent many years studying food and studying nutrition and all this, I'm still experimenting as well, and I'm still trying different things, and I'm always fascinated to hear what's actually, rather than just reading it in a book. I love talking to women and finding out what's working for you right now, and yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just seeing, and everyone's body reacts so differently depending on kind of how healthy we were as a teen, where our set point is, You know, if we were a teenager and we had a really great relationship with food and we didn't overeat sugar like I did, or have lots of starchy carbs as I did, I had the worst diet, it means that I'm sensitive to those sugars. Whereas somebody that's just been totally healthy all their life can have more sugar or can have more refined carbohydrates in their diet and still feel good.
Yeah. Yes, I was a very similar picture. I was very unhealthy as a teenager, very overweight for a lot of years, and so I do find that I have to constantly kind of rejiggle. And now I'm into that perimenopausal phase. It's another journey again. I'm learning a whole new set of what's working for me now.
Yeah, it's different. It's those different phases. We do go through those very different phases. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know you have a lovely gift for our audience. If you could take a minute to tell them about that, please.
Yeah, so the gift is the 10-day Master Your Metabolism Challenge. And it's 10 days of emails and also a video of me just giving tips. And what I focus on is the metabolic health, the metabolism, just simple things to help your metabolism. And when we help our metabolism, we're helping our thyroid, which kind of could start to run a little bit slow. So this is just simple foods, simple lifestyle habits, simple exercises, just simple things each day to give you some insight into what you can do to kind of get your metabolism a little bit revved up so that you can feel better in yourself, feel better mentally, physically, and emotionally.
That sounds amazing. I'll be opting in.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for your time. This has just been a wealth of information. I'm sure people are going to want to watch it a couple of times. There's so many bits and pieces. So thank you again.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right.